Everyone agrees that hiring the right employees is a critical step in determining the level of a company's success, regardless of its size or market sector. It's also an accepted rule of thumb that the more senior the hire, the greater the risk there is in getting it right. But it seems that no matter how accepted this is or what companies do to mitigate the risk of failure, too often the hiring process is still a coin flip as to whether a newly hired employee hits the ball out of the park or ends up striking out. And the reality is that companies and leadership teams continue to struggle with this no matter what they do. They continue to struggle with hiring the right candidate. Most of the solutions forwarded to address this problem, interestingly, focus on the candidate, with the underlying principle being if we develop greater information about a candidate, then we can use that information to make more accurate and better hiring decisions. This fuels a process with many companies of putting their finalist candidates through a whole variety of psychological, psychometric, cognitive, and skills-based testing. In fact, my entire search practice has been devoted to discovering and implementing what I would call our more qualitative as opposed to quantitative methodologies that allow me to get my arms around detailed behavioral information about all the candidates I interview. And then I share the insights that I gain with my clients about those behavioral attributes of those candidates at a far earlier stage in the process than typically a quantitative process does that is reserved for only the finalist candidates. However, the reality is unless you have a search professional who is working with you that integrates a more in-depth assessment process, regardless of whether it's a quantitative or qualitative process, the bulk of the data that you are going to use to make a hiring decision is really the data that you get from your interviewing team. And if a company does in fact leverage additional analysis, that analysis is typically reserved for the finalist candidates only. And this means that the majority of hiring managers, therefore, are relying on the feedback and input of their interviewing team to guide and influence their hiring decisions to the greatest degree. And I actually believe this is one of the major reasons that contributes to the 50-50 chance that a newly hired executive is someone who will deliver the goods in terms of sought after impact and results or fail. Think about it. The high percentage of hires that occur are the result of a company recognizing that they have gaps in their current state as opposed to their desired future state. This is true regardless of the function or business area. It doesn't matter whether it is sales, marketing, finance, IT, HR. It doesn't matter. People recognize that, hey, we're missing skills, we're missing capabilities, we're missing the kind of results that we need. And in order for us to get the results that we're going for, we need folks with different skills, we need folks with different capabilities, we need to implement different strategies than we have implemented before. However, the problem is that most of the individuals who are comprising the interviewing team, they are the folks that have the skills, the experience, the perspective, the mindset, the worldview, if you will, that is reflective of the company's past, where the company has been, and its present, where it is now. They do not have the skills, experience, perspective, mindset, and worldview that is representative of what the company is determined is missing and what they need to have in place in order to get them where they want to go. So this is particularly true with companies that are in an aggressive fast growth mode. And it doesn't really matter whether we're talking about growing from early stage, $1 million to 10 million, or from 10 million to 50 million, or from 100 million to 300 million, or even from a billion to 2 or 3 billion. Regardless of the size, when you are going through that level of growth, when you're growing more than 30-35% year over year, the bulk of employees who are going to be at that company at any given time are going to be more representative of the company's past as opposed to the company's future. They are the employees who literally have gotten you to where you are today. And they are not necessarily the group of employees who are going to be driving you to where you are headed in your future. And that actually results in a phenomenon that's very interesting. So you have an interviewing team that is being asked to weigh in on a candidate and really give an analysis about that candidate that really is I would say, a skewed analysis in many ways. And that analysis then is given a disproportionate say in whether or not a candidate is hired. Executives who are most representative of the skills, experience, the perspective, the mindset, the worldview that are needed for the future, and who could have made the biggest difference and delivered the greatest impact, are then oftentimes ruled out of the process. Because it is natural for folks to resonate more with, largely due to the comfortability of people being more like them. So there is a natural phenomenon of interviewing teams resonating more with the folks that are more like them in terms of the level of skills, their experience, their perspective, their mindset, and the worldview. And those individuals who are more like them are the ones who often are recommended to be hired and move through the process. Many companies and their leaders understand that in order to get from where they are now to where we want to go, that we can't do the same things that got us to where we are now. Leaders and companies know this, and they understand that they need to take on different strategies. They know they need to put in place different processes, and yes, they need to hire different people that have different skills. But very few companies and very few leaders take the time to think through that this also means that in order to hire different people, you can't hire how you've hired in the past. That you need to actually think differently about the hiring process. You need to demand that your interviewing teams think differently about how they interview candidates. Interviewing teams need to ask different questions. Interviewing teams need to look for different data in the interviews than they have in the past. And above all else, they need to recognize that they have a natural bias to hire people based on a set of criteria that are representative of their past instead of their future. They literally need to hire ahead of the curve.